pun intended there, I guess, a seasoned applicant, but we're here today to share information about the program and answer any questions that you may have. We have a really short presentation for you, just to give you a bit of an overview. We're going to start a little bit with an introduction of PVSC, what it is that we do and we don't do. And then Matt is actually going to walk you through the components of the Seasonal Tourist Designation Program. And we'll be able to take any questions that you have from that. So just to get started, we are Property Valuation Services Corporation. We're an independent, not-for-profit. We were created back in 2007 through the PVSC Act. Our budget, which is roughly $16.5 million, is funded all through municipalities. We have some programs that we administer on behalf of the province, the Seasonal Tourist Business Designation being one of them. And then we also have another piece of legislation, the Nova Scotia Assessment Act, which actually dictates how it is that we assess properties and what we're responsible for. So just to be really clear about what it is we do and what we don't have the authority to do, because property assessment is so closely tied to other things like property taxes and tax relief. We just want to clarify what our role is within the broader system. So we are mandated to deliver a property assessment role to all 49 municipalities annually. So we assess all properties in Nova Scotia every year and provide those property assessments to municipalities, which they then use in their broader calculation for property taxation. In addition, we also provide all property owners with an assessment notice so that they are aware of what their property is being assessed at. And that's approximately 630,000 people will receive an assessment notice from PVSC, and that goes out in January of each year. And then on behalf of the province of Nova Scotia, we administer the Seasonal Tourist Business Designation Program. So it's their program. They've created all of the rules and regulations and eligibility components of the program, but we do administer it on their behalf. So just to clarify what PVSC does not do, we do not set tax rates and we do not collect taxes. That falls under the purview of each municipality. We cannot provide tax policy or create tax policy, and we can't provide tax relief. That also falls within municipalities under their own governing legislation, the Municipal Government Act. And then in terms of the Seasonal Tourist Business Designation Program, we cannot change the eligibility requirements or any of the deadlines that the program has within it. So it's really important as we go through this information that you take note of what those timelines are for application, because anything late, unfortunately, we can't do anything with. So that's just a little bit about PVSC and who we are and what we do. I'm going to now turn it over to my colleague, Matt, who's actually going to walk you through the components of the program, and then we can open it up for questions that you may have.
Thanks, Rebecca. So I'll get into what is a seasonal tourist business. So it's either a restaurant, roofed accommodation, or camping establishment that is closed at least 4 months of the upcoming taxation year. If you want to keep going there, Rebecca. Sorry, Rebecca's driving, so I'm going to kind of click over there. So who is eligible? So in order to be eligible, you have to be, as I mentioned, closed at least 4 months of the upcoming tax year. So April 1st to March 31st. So it's fiscal year, not calendar year. You need to, as mentioned, a restaurant, roofed accommodation, or camping establishment. So that little asterisk there, that is representing, it does not include any part of the premises licensed under the Liquor Control Act as a cabaret, tavern, beverage room, or lounge. So there's a little caveat with a restaurant and a roof accommodation. It must be operated by the assessed property owner or their relative, parent, sibling, child, grandchild, or spouse. And it must be managed at and at least 50% owned by the property owner or their relative. In the case of corporation, at least 50% of the voting shares must be held by the property owner or the relative. So all of this information will be disclosed on the next slide. So this is the application. You can see it on the right-hand side there. So how do you apply for these seasonal tourist designations? You fill out the form and you send it in to us. So we send out a form every year to folks that were in the program last year. And if you don't, you can get it on our PVSC website. So the application must be into us no later than September 1st. That is the deadline. If you were in last year and you were granted the seasonal, you have to apply again. It's not an automatic renewal because maybe your business or establishment is looking to open all year round next year. So if you were to change operations, you need to reapply every year, and we look at the eligibility. And we do not have the jurisdiction to extend any late applications. It's not something fun we do, but there is a hard deadline. And if it comes in on September 2nd at 12:01 a.m., it's deemed late. So get it in nice and early so that there's ample time for grace period. So how do you apply? As I mentioned, we send it out to the previous owners. If you don't have a sheet, you can go on our website, pvsc.ca, and on the forms and guides tab at the bottom, you'll see the application for seasonal business designation. It's a PDF form. I was on there earlier. It's really easy. You can fill it out and then you can send it into inquiry@pvsc.ca. If you have any questions regarding the form, you can always give us a shout at our 1-800 number and they can field the questions, or if the service center can't, they can pass it along to one of our assessors and they'd be happy to chat. Whether it be about seasonal tourists or any assessment related questions, we're always there to help out and field the questions for you. So how do you know if you've been approved? It will show up on your assessment notice that the seasonal tourist is listed there. And that's sent out, as Rebecca mentioned, in January of every year. And if you are denied that the application, you don't fit the criteria or whatever the case is, we'll reach out and let you know that this is why you're not enrolled. You do have the right to appeal a seasonal designation. If you feel like it should be on there, there is a right to appeal, and that's just through the regular appeal channels. And that's really it. It's a nice and short presentation. There's not too much in depth about seasonal business, but if you do have any questions, I'm glad to answer them.
Thanks, Rebecca and Matthew. So we are in a webinar mode, so I'm just looking to see if anybody's posting into the chat or into the Q&A in terms of questions or clarification around this. It does sound like it's a really straightforward process. So my question is, from your perspective, I think we've said, it's a significant savings that people can make in terms of their commercial tax valuation. And it is specific to certain types of operators. So if you're if you're operating a bed and breakfast, for example, that typically would fall under a residential tax assessment. So it would not be considered eligible for this particular program, correct? Okay, so.
Sorry, yes, it applies to the commercial portion of your assessment.
Right.
Your residential will be your commercial portion.
And just while I'm looking to see if there are other questions, one other one that I'll pop out there would be, so if an operator applied for this designation and they were not approved for the coming tax year, is there a way for if they did something incorrectly or it was declined for the year, does that put them right out for the year? Or if something is reassessed based on additional information, can they still be reconsidered for the coming tax year? Am I making sense for the timeline?
So if the property owner were to have filled it out incorrectly by accident and then they were deemed not a seasonal, but then
Some
supply.
further information came to light and actually clarified that they should have been eligible after all.
Yeah, so what I would recommend, as soon as you get your assessment notice and you applied for your seasonal, check your assessment notice carefully, because it will say whether it's a tourist business designation or not. If you feel like it should be on there, please appeal. You have the right to appeal. You have your 31-day period after we send out our notices. Send in that appeal, and then that gives us the opportunity to have a second review, and we can take a see why it wasn't eligible, and if there's further information that we can gather. And then if it is deemed that, you know, the information was, there's more information to it, then you can put it on the seasonal backup.
Great. Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. We do have a question from Philip, who is saying, can we get some information on what kind of savings this would actually provide? How much would this actually save me from a tax perspective?
So the eligible portion of your business or your property receives a 25% reduction on your taxes. So that we still assess at market value. That is our mandate. We value it, you know, as we sit, the property and you know, the income generating potential, whether it's a hotel or whatever the case is. And if you're closed 4 months of the year, then the municipality, it's going on the taxes, not on the assessment side. You still see $1 million hotel, but you're not being taxed on $1 million hotel. You would get 25% savings.
Got it. Okay, thank you. So it's good to know that there's sort of a clear process for application, a process for appeals. One of the other questions is just around the renewal process. So, it's September 1st. So one of the questions is, how did September 1st get selected for a tourist renewal? That's still a busy time for many. I'm not sure if you have the answer specifically to that, but maybe you can speak generally to the kind of deadline, renewals, and so on.
That's a great question. I don't know why September 1st was chosen when the program was built. It likely has something to do with the fact that we need to have the information ready for January for the next fiscal year. So I'm assuming that date was kind of chosen, maybe not with owners and operators in mind in terms of your busy season, but maybe more so from an administrative standpoint for the program to actually have time to review applicants and make sure that they're appropriately designated for the next tax year.
Perfect, thank you. And I do think that that's a great point. Maybe we could actually take a look at kind of appreciating that the administration of it needs to sort of have a time frame that works, but for a sector, it may be a different time that works well for it as well. Is there any information that's able to be shared in terms of the uptake for this program across Nova Scotia? So if an operator was interested in learning more about kind of what the engagement level was of their fellow operators in this, or there's no limitations, I understand, in terms of if every seasonal operator that actually was eligible for the program wanted to apply for it for the coming tax year, they actually could all apply for it. There's no upper limit per municipality, correct?
That's correct, and that's why we want to get the word out. The more people that know about the program and assess their eligibility and apply, the better it is for our tourist business operators within the province. So that's why it's really important to share the information so that more people can take advantage of the program and the tax savings.
That's great. So one other question here is around the time frame for things. So the comment was, you know, you have to be closed for a period of time to qualify as a seasonal operation. You can't be open for full 365 a year. So when you talk about being closed, can we dive a little bit into what that looks like for different types of operators? Because I've heard from some operators saying, well, being closed for, you know, multiple months in a row is actually not good for my business, or it's not good for my community, and it's not helping our tourism industry grow. Is there a way for industry to look at how their closures could perhaps be staggered or adjusted and still qualify for the program?
Yeah, so there's nothing in the legislation that says you have to be closed for 4 contiguous months. It is closed 4 months of the year. So if you're closed April and May, and then you're closed December and January, that is 100% okay. You just need to indicate that on your application form, that this is the dates that I'm closed and this is the date that I'm open, but it does not have to be 4 months in a row. It can be a month here and a month there.
Perfect. Thank you. And I'm just going to make one more note for our attendees out there. Anything else that you'd like to pop into the question and answer button? It looks like the chat is not functioning as well as we had hoped. So the Q&A button may be your friend if you have additional questions you want to post in there. So rolling back to that particular topic then, Matt, it may not be 4 months that you're closed in terms of your thought process, but is it fair to say that if I was closed for 120 days through the year, I would be able to count that as my 4 months?
I would say so. I guess we're getting into.
Yeah, no, and I know that that's not how you want to get sort of be fined for it, but and it's a bit of a trick question really, because we as an organization asked for this clarification as well, a number of years ago, and did have it clarified that the 4 months could be broken up into different time collections. So if I'm a restaurant and I'm closed for part of the year, but I'd like to be open for a holiday event, or I'd like to do something for a Valentine's, and if I'm an inn and I want to be open for Valentine's Day or Mother's Day or whatever the case may be, and that's not my typical time opening, I could still be open in that time frame, provided I'm still closed for the minimum length of term to be eligible for the program.
Yeah, that's correct. So as long as it's disclosed on your form when you're open, when you're closed, it's all about transparency. So you wouldn't want to see that you're closed from January to March, and then I attend a function on Christmas Eve and say, oh, it's actually, you're indicated you're going to be closed. So with transparency and fill out the application to the best of your ability. Forecast what you're planning to do for the upcoming year, and then just write it all down, and then we can review it and mark it as eligible or ineligible, depending on the criteria that's set.
Super, thank you for that. It's a great point of clarification, I think. So I'm just checking into the Q&A button to see if there are any other open questions. So I think the last thing that, and I'm not seeing anything pending up right now, but I think the last sort of point that I will make on this, if I could, would just be around that, over the last couple of years, as I mentioned, I mean, TIANS has been talking for a long time about the need for our industry to look for ways to broaden and extend their season as much as possible. And I do know as well that separate from PVSC administering this program, that the extension of the tourism season has also been on the minds of a number of our elected officials. As a matter of fact, there's been some proposed legislation brought forward in terms of encouraging some pilot activity that would see this program be offered without penalty, so that communities could actually collectively look at ways that they could build their tourism season and not be penalized for from a seasonal business tax break to be open beyond those specific timelines and time frames. From a perspective of a municipal support question, this would be something that I would encourage, or I would think that operators should be talking to their local municipal officials in terms of their support for it. So not just apply for your program, but also I'd encourage our tourism operators on this particular webinar and in general out there to be talking to your municipal officials about the need for the seasonal tourist business designation, but also for us to start looking at ways to advance policy that supports business rebuilding now. And that doesn't penalize them for trying new things to start growing business, because this is going to be one of the ways that we can hopefully help advance the industry and start building more, economic spin-off at the community level with employment and local taxes that do get spent on that main street of each of our communities. So just checking back into the Q&A section again and looking to see if there's anything else that's been brought in there. So you two have been extremely prompt and I think efficient is the word I'll use with your information today. And again, I will just point out a couple of quick points for our attendees on the line. So the program does need to be applied for annually. So even if you applied for it last year and were approved, you do still need to apply for it for the coming year. So please don't miss that deadline. September 1st is a hard deadline for PVSC. They actually do not have the capacity or authority to make any changes in terms of extension of deadlines. So if you're looking to apply, if you're looking to get into it, then make sure that you meet that deadline of September 1st. The contact information is up on the screen, and you've been encouraged to reach out directly to the team at PVSC if you've got questions about the program. On behalf of the Tourism Industry Association and our operators across the province, I do want to thank you both, Matthew and Rebecca, for joining us today and sharing this important information. And as I noted before, we do encourage the growth of our seasonal product to coming into a full year offering eventually. But in the meantime, programs like this are going to be really important for industry to build that confidence and look forward to enhancing their own sustainability for the long run. So thank you all for joining us, and I wish you a wonderful afternoon. Take care.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.